So shall we start with Matthew? Any questions for Matthew? Yes?
So you talked about the drop between like 2012 and 2013. What were the reasons for the drop in the ranking?
I wouldn't be entirely sure. It is coming up to an election in Estonia fairly soon. I mean, Ansip has been Prime Minister since 2005. And with an election coming up, obviously there is more intense opposition than usual. Perhaps the Estonian government under Ansip has become aware of that opposition and is doing things in the political sense, in the political sphere, to try and oppose that, which isn't necessarily a detriment to journalism in the country, but it could be considered as an attempt to oppress the opposition for political reasons.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Matthew? Yes?
What makes Estonia so different to Italy, for instance, where their president was a media mogul as well?
Well, I wouldn't call Ansip a media mogul. I'd call him someone who has experience within the field of media. He founded a radio station, which means he can appreciate himself having been directly involved with that station. He can appreciate the right to broadcast and can appreciate the liberties needed to broadcast fairly and honestly. If you look at Italy, Berlusconi would have been a media mogul in question, and he hadn't really had direct experience being involved in broadcasting himself. He simply had ownership of these, which he wanted to exploit for political reasons.
Good. Okay. Yes?
Do you think there could have been a political motive behind Ansip founding Tartu Radio?
Possibly, possibly not. I couldn't say. At that point in his career, I don't think he was particularly politically motivated. I think it was way back in 1991. He'd just come out of university. He'd actually studied journalism at the University of Tartu. So I think at that point his intentions were fairly honest. I can't really see any political motive to it because, although it has given him credibility in his current role, I think if he had any ulterior motives, that would have been clear by now.
Okay. Did you want to ask next?
Has Estonia always had a free and liberal media, or has there ever been any instances of oppression in the history of the country?
I think since the beginning of the 1990s, when the Reform Party became a significant force within the country, that's when people really started to sort of pressure the government for freedoms, which weren't always restricted so much, but they perhaps were more restricted than they are now. I don't think Estonia, since it was a Soviet country, has ever been oppressed to the extent where the rights and liberties to express yourself have been utterly oppressed. Since then it's been pretty fair.
Okay, thanks. Now questions for James, please.
Oh, I didn't.
Oh, did you want to ask something, Matthew?
Yes.
Okay.
What are the opposition's views of the freedom of the press in Estonia?
Well, the guy before Ansip, I've forgotten his name, but he was part of a fairly liberal party. He's now part of a sort of right of centre party. And whilst the views on the freedom of the press aren't so different, I imagine that they would be a lot more tough on broadcast media or press that would be opposing to the government regime. Not the regime, sorry, the leading party. I can't imagine they'd be so willing to just allow anyone to tell the truth about anything. There might be a little bit more oppression.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. Now, questions for James, please. Anyone? Yes?
Is the media self-regulated or regulated by the government?
I'd say it's self-regulated because of the intimidation that the government imposes on them. So it's kind of self-censorship because of government intimidation.
Thanks. Any more questions for James?
What is the opposition to the government like at the moment?
I couldn't say. No, I couldn't say.
Okay. Any other questions for James? No? Okay. We can come back to you later. And then for Lindsay. Questions for Lindsay, please? Yes?
You said in 1995 that the death rate for journalists was higher. Do you have any reasons for that?
I did try and look into that, but I couldn't. I wanted to see if there was a link between Putin's presidency, but I couldn't. I could find when he was elected, but I couldn't find when he wasn't in power. If from a relevant source, that wasn't Wikipedia basically. So I can't say, but I did look into it. That's why I made a reference to it, but I don't know.
Okay.
Can I ask a
Yes,
question?
of course.
You mentioned that Putin was ranked by Forbes as the #1 most powerful man in the world.
Yeah.
What would you say are the ramifications for that in terms of a journalist perspective?
Well, because of the other people that are actually in that list, like the Pope, someone who is looked up to by millions, and then somebody who is so forceful, like Putin, I would say it's bad for journalists, because it seems like he's being congratulated almost for his for how he runs the country, which isn't necessarily perfect at the minute. But the list is compiled from who has the most followers, things like that. But for him to be ahead of Obama, I don't know. It's not. I wouldn't say it was a step in the right direction for anything, for him to be named most influential and powerful man.
Okay. Any other questions?
Were the contract killings associated with the Red Mafia?
Pardon?
Were the contract killings associated with the Red Mafia?
I wouldn't know about that. I don't know anything about that.
Okay.
Do you think, like, the average